Okay, so we've got our output shaft. We want to inspect it here, where it goes in the bushing in the case. As far as your internal gear and shaft, make sure all the gears, no teeth are broken in here. Where the bushings ride on the Sun gear shaft, they're not worn. Where it fits into the output shaft, it's not worn or gouged. You want to look at the reaction carrier, check all your gears, make sure there's no play. Everything's looking good. We're going to start to assemble it. I'm going to do it in a vise here. This makes it a little bit easier. So we've got our output shaft. Now remember, we've got our 3 Torrington bearings. This is the rear Torrington bearing here, which goes on the internal gear here and fits into the output shaft. Now at this point we've got our other Torrington bearing that goes in the carrier here. I want to show you a little difference. As you can see, this Torrington bearing, how many bearings are on it. This is the one I took out of the transmission. I'm going to upgrade to one that has twice as many bearings, as you can see. We're going to install that one just because it has more bearings. I'm just going to go ahead, put some grease on it. Just apply some grease, get your bearing, put it in. Again, apply a little bit more grease, and then get your race. Put your race on. So this is the second Torrington bearing that's going in, and it's going in the gear set right here. This is the next before the rear carrier. Apply some grease to it, just slide it down on there. And now we can go ahead and put our rear carrier on. Okay, now that we've got that, we can go ahead and just lay this down. Okay, so what I've done, I just flipped it upside down and just put it in the vise just so we can install our snap ring in the rear carrier. Just makes it easier. And we can go ahead and turn it back up. Okay, next you want to get your plastic spacer ring, put some grease on the inside of it, slide it over the carrier. At that point we can go ahead, we have to install our washer down in the carrier here, which is a 4-tang washer. You go ahead and put some grease on it. Just to hold it in there, go ahead and slide him on. So now we can go ahead and put our Sun gear in. We want to make sure that the inside, the chamfer, goes down. Then we can go ahead and get our carrier, reaction carrier. We want to make sure the gears are all okay in here. Bushing's okay. And your roller assembly is in good shape. And we can go ahead and get our Sun gear shaft, get it splined into the Sun gear. Then we can go ahead and take our other Torrington bearing, the first Torrington bearing. It'll go on top of the Sun gear. Put some grease on it and slide it down. Then in the center support, we want to get our small washer in here. which I've already installed with some grease, and our race for our Torrington bearing. And we can go ahead and slide that on and spline that in. Make sure that roller clutch is working. And everything looks good. Okay, the next thing we want to do is go ahead and get our piston for the center section in there. I've gone ahead and put the 2 O-rings on them. They're both lip seals. And you have to watch because you see these recessed pieces here. They do fit into the center section, so you have to work it around to get them in there. We just go ahead and want to get our seal installer. Go ahead, work it around. Once we get the seal started in there, then we can go ahead and line up our spring pockets. Being a little tough, this one. Just gotta work at it. So, there's only 3 springs. So just put one in the same location in each spring pocket. And you have our retaining plate. And this you can just do by hand.
Well, let's talk about Rogers Spring Smart Sale. Up to $100 off the hottest smartphones, like the BlackBerry Torch. Only at Rogers stores and only until March 31st. Wow. So, what do you really think? It's like reaching level 9 in Pandora's Dream. And that is...
Just like so.
Amazing. Rogers Spring...
Okay, the next thing we're going to do is go ahead and put our rings on our center support. Now there'll be 6 rings the same size. 4 for the center support, 2 are for the pump. Now we're not going to put all 4 rings on this stator. We are only going to put 3. So you're going to put 1 on the bottom, 1 on the second, we're going to skip the third, and 1 on the top. I've gone ahead and just put some lube on there. And then we want to stagger them. Like to make sure there's lots on there so the rings slip in there with no problem into the drum. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and install this whole assembly in the case. What we have to do is where the center support bolt is in the center section, we have to line that up with this center hole. You'll see the 3 holes in the case here. This is where the center support bolt goes. So we have to line that up as we install this in there. And it may take a couple of shots, but I usually get it in the case as much as I can. I grab the output shaft. hit it first time in. It may take you a couple of times to get it. And then we want to take our bolt. Go ahead and take our semi-support bolt, which is 3/8 12 point. Snug that up. Next we'll go on to the drums. Okay, we're going to go ahead and install our piston in our direct drum. So we have the 3 seals, the one that goes in the drum with the lip up. And we have our small seal in the piston and the large seal in the piston. Now these 3 seals are exactly the same as the forward. So I've gone ahead and installed them and just put some assembly lube on them. What you want to do is just go ahead and take your feeler gauge and just work that piston into the drum. Okay, then we want to get our spring compressor, install it, get our springs. Now there are 2 holes that we leave out, and they're right directly across from each other. We go ahead and get our spring retainer and our snap ring. Go ahead and compress that. Go ahead and get your snap ring put in. Make sure it's fully seated. Okay, we're going to go ahead and install our clutch pack. Now, the spec for clutch clearance here is 60 to 70 thou. So if you want to do your clutch clearance, an easy way is before you go ahead and put the spring retainer in with the springs, go ahead and do your clutch clearance. You can get your feeler gauges in there. And then go ahead and install your retainer and springs. Makes it a little bit easier for you. Make sure you soak your clutches for 30 minutes before installing them. And also, you have to make sure that there's a check ball either in the piston or in the drum. It has to have one or the other. In this case, the check ball was in the piston, and in the forward it's in the drum. So you cannot mix those pistons up. And your pressure plate. I've gone ahead and done my clearances already. That's a direct. Now the forward is done exactly the same way as far as the piston. As you can see, the check ball is not in the piston. It'll be in the drum. Right here. And also, if you're using this type of spring compressor, you'll have to press out the center shaft to use that and then press it back in later. The only difference from the forward to the direct is that the seal for the drum that faces up on the inside, we've left that out. So again, we can go ahead and get our clutches. Now for this clutch pad, the clearance is 30 to 40 thou. And what we want to do is line these V's up for the steels. Lining that V up on the plates just allows the oil to escape faster. At that point, you want to get your clutch hub. Get your washers put on it. The brass thicker washer goes on the inside. And go ahead and line the hub up to all the clutch plates. Till it seats down. Make sure that it's fully seated, and that's the forward drum assembled. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and assemble our pump. Now what you want to watch for is grooving, gouging in here, in this area. Also the same with the gears. Any large grooving or gouging, they should be replaced. Make sure your bushing is good. Install your new seal. I've gone ahead and just put some oil in here for the gears. And go ahead and install your gears. Now there's marks on the gears. There's a dot on the outer gear and a dot on the lug on the inner gear, and the lugs always go up. If you can see the space at the back. And you want to check your stator bushing in here. Check for grooving in this area here. Get your O-ring installed around the pump, around the perimeter of the pump. I've gone ahead and put our washer on and our two sealing rings. And then there's also a bushing in here you want to get checked. And I've gone ahead and added some assembly lube on and put the gasket on. So we're ready to go ahead and assemble the pump together. And then you want to grab your pump bolts, which are they have the 5 lines around them. You'll have 3 long and 2 short. Then to align the two pump halves, you want to get a large clamp. What I've done is got a couple of 5-inch gear clamps and just put them together. And put them around the perimeter of the pump. And just snug that clamp up. And that'll align the two halves. Then you can go ahead and torque your bolts to 20 foot-pounds. Then after torquing the bolts to 20 foot-pounds, you can go ahead and take your gear clamp off. And that pump is basically ready to go into the case. Now you'll see this spring here. This is a pressure regulator, valve and spring assembly in here. You can purchase a stiffer spring, which will raise the line pressure. To do that, there's just a C-clip in here in the pump. You just have to put pressure on this when you take it out. And there is quite a bit of pressure on it, so you want to make sure that you have some eyewear on. Protective glasses. Go ahead and push that down, take that C-clip out. Then you can go ahead and take this assembly, valve and spring assembly, and replace it with a stiffer spring. Now depending on some shift kits that you can purchase, it'll come with a stiffer spring in the kit for you to install that. Okay, so I've installed the case into a drum to make it easier to see for the camera view. Now normally we would be installing this band before we put the direct drum in, but in this application we're going to leave the band out. We won't be using the band. So where we left off with, we had installed the center support and put the bolt in the center support itself, but now we have to get this large tapered snap ring. It's the largest of them all, and install this in to this rear gear section, the center support. What we want to do is we want to cover up this opening here in the case. We don't want the end of the snap ring to be in that area. You want to make sure it's seated fully. Then at this point we're going to go ahead and get our intermediate clutches and install them. Start with the steel, then a clutch, all the way up to the pressure plate. Again, make sure you've soaked them for 30 minutes. Now the pressure plate you can see has a large section here that goes in the large opening on the one side. Okay, so next we're going to go ahead and put our snap ring in for our intermediate clutches. Now this here, if you look, it's a stock Turbo 400 snap ring. You can see how wide it is. We're not going to use that. We're going to use a snap ring out of a Dodge 727 transmission, and this is for one of the drums in the transmission. You can get them in different thicknesses, which is nice about them, and they have twice the area that the stock spring has. So we're going to go ahead and use this, and again, we don't want the ends to be in that open area. Make sure it's fully seated. And then you want to go ahead and line these clutches up. Try to line them up as good as you can, because it is difficult to get them in. So we're going to go ahead and give it a shot here.